I would like to tell you a story of a little boy born in Zimbabwe and raised in a little village called Mavurazi. One day, the little boy, together with his two older brothers, got up early in the morning to embark on what was going to be one of the most exciting journeys of his life. It was the first day of school. And he was excited at the prospect of being in school, walking with his friends to school and meeting even new friends. So as the eastern sky glowed a bright orange, they set off on their journey, along with all the other kids from the village. Oh, the little boy was excited. As they walked onto the gravel road, the kids started running. And the little boy struggled to keep up with all the other kids because the gravel cut the soles of his tender feet. Luckily for him, one of the older boys picked him up, put him on his shoulders, and carried him for the remainder of that 5-kilometer journey. From this vantage point, he could see the other kids in front of him running, and he could hear them shouting, calling out each other's names. On the side of the road, he saw an apprehensive-looking young boy behind the bushes, herding cattle. He was not attending school that year. A little bit further down the road, he saw some young mothers, probably in their teens, carrying babies on their backs and buckets on their heads as they branched off towards the village well to collect some water. Further down the road, the little boy looked up and he felt the warmth of the rising sun on his face. And at that moment, he looked into the horizon and he saw the mountains that bordered Mavurazi from the rest of the world. They were like a barrier. They were like a barricade, easily setting this little village some 20, 30 years back in time. Later on in life, he would learn that beyond those mountains, they had electricity. Just before they branched off into the schoolyard, he saw the village hub with 2 shops and a bus stop. This place would come alive once every day, when the local bus service would stop and drop off some passengers from the city and pick up others who'd be headed in different directions to different destinations. Others would simply just come and sit and anxiously wait to see who was getting off the bus. At school, he attended his first assembly with all the other kids. And later on, his grade 1 teacher would usher him to his first classroom under the shade of a big tree behind the grade 2 classroom block. There, the teacher would hold the only book that they had and read aloud to all the kids. During the course of that week, the little boy learned how to write. And he would carefully form the letters of the alphabet with his little fingers in the dirt. Erase them, come back again, painstakingly rearranging them to try and form one word. And when he got it, he slowly stood up, and right there, in front of him, was that word. Magical in the sense that it represented who he was, a part of who he was. It was like a promise of who he could be. One word, right there at his feet in the dirt. Alfred. Today I stand before you, Dr. Alfred Chidembo. You see, there were signs of promise there. Because in my first year of primary school, I came top of my class. And research tells me that kids actually develop their motor skills by writing in the sand. So my mom and I celebrated in style. She took me to the village shops and she bought me some sweets. And I clung on to those sweets the whole day and carried them wherever I went until they started melting. My little fingers were sticky and my palms were covered in an array of colors, and I would lick them. That was my reward. Then following year, my life took a totally different turn. My dad moved me from the village to the city to join the rest of the family. And the first thing that he did for me and my brothers was to register us at the local library. And he gave us 50 cents each to pay our subscriptions. And I remember vividly the first day I walked into that space, the library. I was awestruck by the number of library shelves with all the books stacked on them. I could not believe it. So many books in one room. So I got straight into it. I started reading as much as I could. I rhymed with Dr. Seuss, who said, the more you read, the more things you'll know. The more you learn, the more places you'll go. I traveled to the countryside of England with the famous 5. I solved mysteries with the secret 7. I went on adventures with the 3 Musketeers. Yeah, that's how I pronounced it. I had lemonade with the famous 5 on the green grass in England. I didn't even know what lemonade was. And during that time, I would watch my sister closely because she used to go to the library at 9 o'clock in the morning to borrow her first book, then rush back home, read it, come back before they closed the library at 4 p.m. to borrow another book so she could read overnight. She was a bookworm, that one. Today, she's an assistant director, actually, for a large company in California. Who would have thought that this little boy would end up here? So I realized that my dad's investment in me and the actions of my sister sparked an interest, a love for science and mathematics for me that culminated in a PhD in materials engineering. You see, what my dad did for me is something that I cannot do for every child in Zimbabwe. But those kids in Zimbabwe, those kids in Mavurazi, are not just ordinary kids. These are my nephews, my nieces, my cousins. And I realize that they may never enjoy the joy of opening a book. They may never fully realize their own potential because the barriers, the mountains, the barricades in Mavurazi shut them from the rest of the world. In my home village, 50% of all Year 7 students do not graduate to high school. What do you think happens to these kids? The boys. They end up doing odd jobs in their home, eventually becoming subsistence farmers. The girls. They get married off in their teens, some as early as 13. Others contract HIV and AIDS before they reach the age of 20. I have 2 girls, 5 and 6.5. I realize that I cannot help every child in my village. But I believe that I can bring the whole world to them through books. Friends, I believe you and I can bring the whole world to them through books. You and I can give them a chance to life through books. Do you know that Australia sends 5 million books to landfill every year? That's equivalent to a library shelf that stretches from Canberra all the way to Newcastle. That is 50,000 books per 5 kilometres. Now, if you really want to torture yourself, try driving from Canberra to Newcastle with 2 little kids sitting in the backseat of your car. I did that a few months ago. I'm telling you, it was painful. That journey was long. So my wife and I have set up a charity called Aussie Books for Zim. We collect books from people like you and me and arrange for them to be delivered into the hands of children back in villages like Mavurazi, to people like my nieces and my nephews, so that they can start reading. When we started this initiative 6 years ago, we had no idea where we were going to end up. We just wanted to collect 2,000 books, send them over to Mavurazi, and walk away. But in 4 months, we had 10,000 books. Our little apartment was full of books, overflowing with books. Then our friends' garages were full of books. And their friends' garages were full of books. Today, we have set up 10 libraries in Zimbabwe. And one library we've built brick by brick. By the end of this month, we would have built 3 more libraries. But these are not just ordinary buildings. These are places where kids can discover the joy of going on adventures with the Secret Seven, where they can rhyme with Dr. Seuss again. And what makes our initiative so unique is because we can go back to those communities. We can carry these books and be able to break those barriers and deliver these books into the hands of these children who are not just ordinary kids, but they are our nieces, our cousins, and our nephews. We are driven by sustainability. Sustainability through relationships. And relationships are our currency. And my audacious goal is to get 1 million books in the hands of 1 million children in 10 years. And we are well on our way, thanks to some people who have come along the journey. People like my own superhero, Ari. Little Ari from Wollongong, 7-year-old Ari. Ari tried to get rid of all the books that he had. His mother had purchased books from the time that he was born, and she had started reading to him ever since he was a young boy. And now he wanted to get rid of all his books, to give them away, but no one would take them, so they were destined for landfill. Until Ari heard about Aussie Books for Zim and what we were doing, he came up with a brilliant idea. He said, "Mom, can you do me a favor? Can you get me a rubber stamp?" To which his mom agreed and got him a rubber stamp. So once he got the stamp, he went to work straight away, stamping all of his 560 books with a special message. To Zimbabwe, with love from Ari. His mom asked him later on, "Ari, why that particular message?" To which he said, "Because I want the kids in Zimbabwe to know that there's somebody who cares about them here in Australia." Now that is my superhero, Ari. In 2019, I went back to Zimbabwe. We had set up a library at Chisuma Primary School, close to Victoria Falls. And while we were assembling some library shelves with my team, one of the teachers walked in and told us an amazing story. He told us the story of Joseph. How Joseph never used to read aloud in class because he was shy and he lacked the confidence. But one day the teacher walked into the classroom and asked the kids if anyone would volunteer to read aloud to the whole class. And kids being kids, they were mean. They're like, "Joseph." And little Joseph slowly got up picked up his book, holding it in his trembling arms. He started reading. The more he read, the more confident he became. By the time he finished reading, he felt a wave of excitement shoot through his body, and he took in the admiration of all his classmates. What they didn't know was that little Joseph had been spending time in our library reading Ari's books. Friends, you see now, it starts with one word, sometimes written in the dirt. Just one word. One word, one book. A special gift rescued from the trash and placed into the hands of one child, a treasure.